What's going on, shooters? Welcome back to Centerfire TV, and thanks for tuning in. As always, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you'll be alerted when I drop new videos on the channel. If you like the video, please hit the like button and leave a comment down below if there's anything you want to see in the future. Okay, so let's take a second to talk about AK-47s. For most of my adult life as an avid shooter and lover of military-style firearms, I've shot AR-15s. The overwhelming majority of semi-auto rifles I've ever owned were ARs. At this point, I've bought, traded, and sold more AR variants, both small and large frame, than I can remember. But the very first semi-auto rifle I ever bought with my own money wasn't an AR. It was an early 90s MAK 90 thumb-hole AK-47. It was a great shooting and very reliable rifle, but at the time the biggest drawback for me was the inability to mount optics or lights on the gun. Even back in the early 90s, I always thought that a long gun without a light on it was virtually worthless, and I've always been a huge advocate of red dot sights. AR-15s with their rails and mounting solutions drew me away from the AK platform. In '94, when I became a police officer, I was issued a Colt LE6920 M4 jury. That kind of sealed the deal. It's been ARs ever since. Well, fast forward to about a year ago, and I started thinking about an AK. I started wanting one after buying a CZ Bren 2MS, chambered in 7.62x39. I like that little rifle, and I really like the cartridge. I started looking at ammo availability and what's out there and what could be bought by the case that's reasonably priced, but could still be considered a round with good stopping power. I mean, those zombies ain't going to kill themselves. Wolf Military Classic 124 grain is readily available. It's cheap. It isn't a bad performer on the terminal ballistic side, even if it does over-penetrate way too much for a typical self-defense scenario. That, coupled with the fact that I saw the AK platform had evolved to include accessory rails for mounting optics and lights, the gun became appealing to me again. So I started doing my research online to look into who was the new hotness for AK builders. I was so out of the loop on AKs, I had no idea where to start. But in my research, I kept seeing the name Jim Fuller and Rifle Dynamics come up. A search on YouTube for Rifle Dynamics led me to a video review by the one and only Grand Thumb on the very rifle we are going to be looking at today, the Rifle Dynamics 704 pistol. I had no idea who was a quality rifle builder of AKs, but I knew enough to know that AKs vary greatly in terms of quality of parts and workmanship. After watching the LT's review on his channel regarding this rifle, I felt confident on pulling the trigger on one, so I picked up the phone and placed my order with Casey at Rifle Dynamics, and a few months later, I had this custom-built beauty in my hands. So let's take a quick detailed look at the rifle, its features, then I'll tell you about my experiences shooting it, and also a little bit about why the AK as a whole is really appealing to me now more than ever. As of right now, I have just about 2,000 rounds to it, so I'm really starting to get comfortable with the platform again. Before we do that, as always, I want to take a quick second and disclose the fact that I have zero relationships with Rifle Dynamics. They didn't give me this rifle. I've never met anybody from Rifle Dynamics before. I bought this with my own money. So you're going to get a straight up review, my straight up opinion, no holds barred. So let's take a look. All right, guys, let's go through this gun from back to front. I know I joked around a little bit saying it's a rifle. It's not a rifle, it's a pistol. It's got an SB tactical brace on it. This is registered as a pistol. I was just poking a little fun at our ATF friends. I do plan on SBRing the gun because I don't know when ATF is going to change their mind again on braces, and I don't want to be left with a gun that's basically worthless to me until I SBR it. So I'm going to go ahead and SBR it. In the meantime, hopefully within the 10 months or so it takes me to get my tax stamp, they won't change their mind again and I can still use it like this until I can put a regular stock on it. So the stock itself is mounted on a M4 tube. It uses an M4 adapter that I think is made by Rifle Dynamics. It's got their logo on it. I think the older models it wasn't made by Rifle Dynamics. It was made by somebody else, but I think these are. It's an M4 buffer tube that just allows you to mount the stock, but it doesn't have anything in it. There's no buffer, there's no spring or anything like an AR-15 because it doesn't need it. It's an AK, it doesn't have it. The spring's mounted up here. It has a Tango grip that came with it, Tango down grip, I believe. It works fine. The gun is Cerakoted in Rifle Dynamics color. They call it Magnese. It's flat gray. Looks great. It's fine. Cerakote's pretty durable coating. I do it myself, and it holds up pretty well. The gun does have a Krebs safety on it. Let's talk about that real quick because this was a big upgrade for me. This is one of the things I hated about AKs is the fact that the safety wasn't ambidextrous, and I didn't like where you had to deactivate it and activate it from. It was all the way up here, so I always had to take my hand off the grip to activate it, and I just don't like having to do that. I would either that or I'd have to reach under like this or over like this, and I didn't like that. So what Krebs did is they just made a little tang here. It's stamped metal, and it works out really good, and it's very convenient, and it makes you able to operate the safety much more conveniently. It still isn't ambidextrous, but this is much more convenient. Moving forward, so remember we had talked about, I had talked about how important it was for me on a rifle to be able to use dot sights, like most people do these days anyway, and mount a light on it. By the way, I put a Leupold Delta Point Pro on it, which works out great. It's very small, light, out of the way, it's unobtrusive, but it also gives me the field of view I need to get that dot on quick, and it doesn't take up a lot of room on the rail. There's limited space on the rail, unlike an AR-15, which has rail going all the way from front to back. I've got limited space. This thing worked out perfect. I do have a light put on it. It is the Surefire X300 Scout. I'm using a Haley Strategic Thorntail offset mount. Worked out perfectly for the way this thing is set up. It pushes the sight off to the side and forward a little bit, so when I don't need the light, it's out of the way. When I need the light, I just reach forward or back and hit the button, and it activates the light. No cables, nothing to get hung up, much easier to use, very durable little system. So as far as mounting points on the front, remember I talked about this is one of the things that made the AK more appealable to me again, is now they have these mounting solutions. This is the SLR Rifleworks. This is a 9-inch M-LOK rail system. I can put this BCM hand stop on it. I can put these little mag pull pads on it that keep the gun from burning me. I get the pick rails up front where I can mount all my accessories on it. It makes the gun much more functional for what I need it to do. The front end is built by Rifle Dynamics. It's a tunable gas block, tunable gas system. It has the front sight mounted in it, or it's integral with it. I have not had to mess with tuning the gas system. It functions perfect the way it is. I'm assuming Rifle Dynamics tuned it at their facility, so I didn't need to, and it runs perfect. Now I know that might change if I add a suppressor to it, so, but having the option to be able to do that is nice, and I will be adding a suppressor to it. This thing is loud, and in a normal firing schedule, I want to be able to have the ability to put a suppressor on if I want to shoot without hearing protection on, or even with hearing protection on, and take some of that concussion out. This thing is pretty loud. It's a short barrel and it's got a muzzle brake on it. Let's talk about the muzzle brake. I've got I opted for the PWS muzzle brake. I didn't go with like the dead air muzzle brake for their cans because I don't know which suppressor I'm going to use. That brings up a point. The way this barrel is manufactured by Rifle Dynamics, because they focus on the kind of precision and tolerances we would expect in higher end rifles, unlike some of the barrels that are manufactured in third world countries, the bore is, the way the front end is threaded, it's concentric with the bore, which means that I can mount any suppressor I want on here, not like an AK specific suppressor that accepts those kind of tolerance variances. I can mount any suppressor I want on here that's 30 caliber and rated for a 7.62 by 39, but it will also, I won't get baffle strikes because it's a higher quality machined barrel. The barrel's 11.5 inches long, and it is salt bath nitrided, which makes the gun, the barrel itself very durable, very hard. It hardens the surface of the barrel. It is not a treatment. It is not a coating. It's not a surface treatment, which would change the dimensions of the barrel, which obviously you wouldn't want when you're talking about the bore and stuff. But it does harden the surface of the metal and makes it much more durable, should give you more service life out of the barrel, which is always good. Let's talk about the trigger real quick. This one has the fine group trigger in it. I believe it's fine group. I'm not really familiar with AK triggers, but this one is actually really nice. The ones I've had in the past weren't bad, but they weren't great. This one is really good. It does have a longer take up than I'm used to, than you would find on an AR. It's got a pretty long take up, but when you hit the wall, it's very crisp, and there's no creep or anything when you go to pull the trigger. It's got a very light trigger pull for an AK at least. It's about a 3 to 4 pound trigger pull. I don't have a trigger pull gauge, but I've fired enough that I can kind of gauge it. And it's very crisp when it breaks. And once it hits the wall, it's very short to get it to go. So it's kind of like a two-stage trigger. I got to get used to that a little bit. With most of my ARs, I use a single-stage trigger. The reset is really crisp, but it does take a long time to get there. You got to let it go a little while, and then it's very crisp when it resets. then it breaks again really good. So it's a very acceptable trigger. Overall, the gun is very light. It's much lighter than it looks. It's only about 6.5 pounds, and it's there's something about AKs. I think it's the low profile to the gun. Like if you look at the profile of the gun this way, it's very thin, and the buttstock is right in line with the barrel, and it points so easy. It's so flickable. It's so maneuverable. It just goes right where you want it, and it just feels right. It feels. The best way to describe an AK, getting back into it again, is especially one small like this and the way it's set up. It feels intuitive. Like I could think of this gun. This is the kind of gun that you can take, manufacture it, drop a whole crate of them off to a group of 17, 18-year-old kids in the jungle somewhere, give them some magazines, and in 10 minutes they'll figure out, wait, this goes in here, and look, oh, and all you got to do is do this, and then you just got to pull the trigger and it goes bang. Yeah, and that's what the AK-47 was designed to be. That's its function. That's what I love about it. So I really am really digging getting back into the AK platform. One thing I did want to mention real quick, because I was just changing the mag and it kind of reminded me of it. I would have liked to have seen a different mag release. If you're not familiar with AK mags, if you've never shot one, just in case you don't know, an AK mag, it isn't like an AR mag. You're not putting a box inside a box. It's got a little tang right there that you insert in, and then you lock it into place. To release it, you hit this tab here, and it releases the magazine. This thing is like, I don't know, it's like stamped metal, and it's not like knife sharp, but it's kind of sharp, and it's when you're really, and it takes a lot of pressure to move it, and when you're running it hard, and you're really working on your reloading drills, and you're changing out one mag for another, and you're having to jam your thumb up in there to pull this thing out and pop the next one in. I've had it catch up underneath my nail and almost rip my nail off when you're running on a really fast, hard schedule and you're trying to work on your split times for reload drills and stuff like that. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little wider, more machined mag release that's a little more comfortable to use, maybe a little bit longer to get a little more leverage. I've seen some that you can even operate with your index finger that make it even easier. So then you just got to knock the magazine out with one hand, and you don't have to worry about that where you got to use the mag to do it off the thing, and sometimes you miss it. But the ones I've seen are they're shady looking. I wouldn't trust them. I would like to see maybe Rifle Dynamics work on offering a more high quality one, and I would definitely send the gun back for an upgrade if they did that. But other than that, I am super happy with the way the gun shoots and the way it performs. So let's take a look at some video of it. So let's discuss my take on this AK. I have to start first by explaining my expectations of this gun before I received it. Look, it's been a long time since I've owned an AK, but I know what an AK is. It's a tool, first and foremost. That's what it was from the day the first one was built. That's what it is today, period. Unlike the AR-15, which has evolved or devolved, depending on how you want to look at it, into the form that the modern interpretations of the rifle takes today. In the AR world, you have everything from basic tools to Gucci guns with more bling and flair than function, all the way to aerospace levels of engineering and workmanship. This isn't the case with the AK platform. Even top-tier manufacturers like Rifle Dynamics have not left behind their origins of this platform. This is a tool just like its predecessors. When you run the bolt on it, when you work the safety, when you disassemble it, it feels like something you would buy at a Tractor Supply shop or something that belongs in a diesel motor. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It's basic, it's rough, it's almost brutish by comparison, like an axe or a hammer. But when you need an axe or a hammer, why would you buy a scalpel? The gun shoots just like it should. It's light, it's nimble, it's flickable, it's ridiculously reliable. Now I will tell you, I did have some malfunction issues with the gun. They were mag related because it's only happened with one magazine, and it was the one mag that got sent with the gun, which is ironic. It's a Magpul mag. The gun doesn't like Magpul mags, but that's what they sent me. Every other mag I've used in the gun, it runs like a scalded ape. Bake lights, I've got some steel Romanian mags. I've got these, I don't even know what these are. I forgot, I think they're Korean. They're like a polymer, metal reinforced polymer. They run fine. I'm on about 2,000 rounds through the gun, and the only malfunctions I've had were with, and I haven't cleaned it, haven't done anything to it, and the only malfunctions I've had with it were with the Magpul mag. So I just threw the Magpul mag away and I just won't use it. Everything else runs great. The recoil impulse on the gun is much softer than you would expect for a gun so light. It's about 6.5 pounds. I hate to use the word, but it's almost sophisticated feeling. The recoil is more than an AR, obviously, but it's incredibly manageable under fast rates of fire. The trigger's great, and the gun is more than accurate enough. But with all that in mind, we have to discuss the price, because it's a definable characteristic of the gun, because it's so much higher than your average AK, that at least arguably shoot just as good. As configured, this gun was right around $2,700, I think is what we paid for it. Honestly, that's ridiculous for an AK. That's in the realm of a slicked out NASA level quality AR like a JP Enterprises SCR-11. But I'm fine with it, and I'll tell you why. When I ordered this gun, I was on a time crunch. As I mentioned, I was completely out of the loop in the world of AKs, and I had a carbine class scheduled with Chris Costa in Wyoming coming up. In fact, it's in about 3 weeks. Since I hadn't shot an AK in so long, I figured what better way to get back into the manual of arms, working reload and malfunction drills, than attending Chris's class and letting him get me back into character with a platform I haven't used in 30 years. So I needed to make sure I could get the gun in time, and I needed to know that it would be a reliable gun. I didn't want to drive across the country with a rifle that was going to break down on me midway through a 2,500 round firing schedule. So I figured with Rifle Dynamics' reputation, I'd be safe, even if I had to pay more to get it. So I called over there and I spoke to Casey. I asked her about their build time frame. She told me it was currently 4 to 5 months. I went ahead and placed the order. I received the gun in exactly 5 months, just a couple days short, just as promised. The entire build time, Rifle Dynamics kept in touch with me. They gave me updates on the build status, when it was test fired, functional, when it was going off to be Cerakoted, when it was being shipped, every detail. So I received a gun that admittedly is more expensive than other similar AKs, but I also got exactly what I paid for. A promise that was upheld and a product that is supported by a company with a reputation. That's invaluable to me. This rifle was well worth the premium I paid for it. The peace of mind, the reputation in a platform that is notorious for varying levels of quality and functionality. I've been buying custom-built rifles and handguns for 30 years with varying degrees of satisfaction. Sad to say that in the firearms world, today's date, this kind of service isn't common anymore. The very same week I placed my order with Rifle Dynamics, I also ordered another AK from a different shop. The spec seemed right, the price was right. I'm now 6 months past their promised delivery date. Their communication is and has been horrible. I'm beginning to think that I might as well just kiss my $2,000 goodbye, but that's a subject for another video. Rifle Dynamics, on the other hand, they earned my loyalty, and I'll be buying from them again. I promise. Well, anyways, guys, that's my 2 cents. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, remember to subscribe and leave a like on the video, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.